One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. There's a topic that we need to cover today that I get asked about all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean literally at least once a day, I see people asking the question, how do I monetize my podcast? How do I make money with my podcast? Is it time for me to monetize my podcast? So I could go into all the different ways that you can make money. And trust me, there's so many fun things that we can talk about when it comes to making money with your podcast. But we actually need to take a step back and ask the question, are you ready to monetize your show? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today, because if you've been trying to figure out the world of podcasting, think of this show as the time-saving shortcut you've been looking for. So let's get right to it, shall we? So talking about making money with a podcast, I used to feel really uncomfortable with this conversation. And it was mostly because I didn't have a lot of experience with it. And I, like most people, was under the impression that the only way to really make money with a podcast is to have millions of downloads, thousands of listeners, and go to another company and say, hey, is my show good enough for you to sponsor it? Oh, it just makes me cringe, even just saying it, because I'm like, no. That is not the only way. Yes, it is one of the ways to monetize your podcast, but it's not the only way. And so before we can even get to that, right? Before we can even talk about, well, what are the ways that you can monetize your show? We really do have to ask the question that I said in the beginning, and that is, are you ready to monetize? Because there are really 3 different aspects of how to know if you're ready to monetize your show. Because at the end of the day, what I'm trying to help you avoid is a bunch of complicated messes that can come from monetizing your show without really being ready, right? And you're like, well, Crystal, what do you mean? Why do I have to be ready? All I'm doing is collecting checks, right? I am just gonna sit back and watch my bank account get fat because that's what I wanna do. Well, yeah, that'd be fantastic if that were the case, but that is not the case, okay? Like, it is still work to put in some of the things that we're going to talk about today into practice. So the first question or the first topic, I guess I should say, is we need to talk about your mindset, okay? Because if you are treating your podcast like a hobby, it's not going to get very far. And I know most people that listen to this show, like, you're serious and you're trying to figure things out. And maybe it is just kind of a side project for you right now. It doesn't have your full attention. And maybe that's just kind of the way of life, right? Like, maybe you're super busy with 1,000 other things and you're like, well, my podcast is kind of this side thing that I'm doing. And maybe in the future, I will eventually turn it into more like a podcast business and be able to monetize it that way. But I'm going to tell you right now, if the question is this podcast a hobby or business? And you say it's a hobby, it's going to be really hard to monetize your hobby. So let me give you another example. If I were someone who knits, I don't know why, like knitting, like needle and thread, like those kind of things, not needle and thread. What is that, like crocheting? See, I don't even know what it is. This is a terrible example. But let's go back to puzzles. Okay, we recently got back from our vacation of visiting family in West Texas, and my mother-in-law loves doing puzzles, like jigsaw puzzles, like 1,000-piece puzzles. And this is a hobby that she has. And she's like, I'm retired. I can do tons of puzzles all the time. And it's something she really enjoys. And it's a hobby for her. She's not trying to monetize this. She's not saying, oh, I'm going to set up a camera and have people watch me on YouTube while I do this jigsaw puzzle. She's like, no, it's something I do to relax. I put on HGTV in the background and I just enjoy doing these puzzles. It's relaxing for me. And I got to admit, this is something I really enjoy doing too. Like, I love doing jigsaw puzzles, like, fun fact about me. But it's something that is a hobby. That is a very clear definition of a hobby and not a business. And she has no desire to ever make it a business. So if that's the way you feel about your podcast, you're like, this is just a love project. This is something I'm just doing to, be my creative outlet. It's something that I just have a lot of extra time and I just want to share my message. It's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But that is a hobby. So by the end of this episode today, I want you to have a very clear picture on whether your podcast is a hobby or whether it is a business. Because if it is a hobby, it's going to be very hard to monetize. It just is, because you have a different mentality. You will say, well, if it doesn't work, it's okay. It's just a hobby. It's almost like you're giving yourself an out if you don't ever get any traction with monetizing, or you're like, I created something and I offered it to my audience, but it didn't work. But that's okay because it's just a hobby. It gives you an out consistently over and over again. It's almost like it's an excuse for why your business, your podcast business, is not working. So I want you to just make a clear distinction, draw that line in the sand. Is your podcast a hobby or is it a business? Okay. And for those of you that said, my podcast is a business, or I want it to be a business, I want to make money with my podcast, well, then you have to ask yourself the second question, right? The first topic we had to talk about was mindset. The second thing is Systems. Do you have processes and workflows in place for how monetizing your podcast is going to work? Now, there's a few different ways that we can approach this, but I will just give you a few examples of affiliate campaigns, right? Because this is where I really recommend a lot of new podcasters start, especially if you have a really small following or you're just getting into the online space and you don't have your own programs, services, and you're like, I think one day in the future, I want to have a digital course. I want to have other aspects of my business, but I don't have it right now, but I am ready to monetize. I want to start from the very beginning generating revenue. Then affiliate marketing is definitely one of the best places to get started. And actually, I want to know, I want you to tag me on social media or ask in our Facebook group, do you want more content about promoting affiliate campaigns on a podcast? Because this is something I've been thinking a lot about. I actually am deep in the trenches on really planning and creating my affiliate campaigns that are coming up. We actually have one in July that we're going to be promoting B School with Marie Forleo and Digital Course Academy with Amy Porterfield in September. So these are things that I am actively doing right now. And I want to know if you want to see kind of behind the scenes of these affiliate campaigns. So reach out in the Facebook group and tell me if you're not part of our Facebook group. It's going to be in the show notes. So crystalprofit.com/episode 269 is where you're going to find how to connect with us in the Facebook group. But let's go back to affiliate campaigns. So there are so many processes and procedures in place for monetizing my podcast with affiliate campaigns. Now, I won't get into all of the details because y'all, if you've been around here, you know that I love Asana. My Asana project plans for these affiliate campaigns, they're legit amazing. I'm going to toot my own horn for a second, but it's because I have spent hours and hours and hours deciding what's important and what's not important. But when it comes down to it, affiliate campaigns are all about how does this program relate to my audience, right? Because B School, here's a great example. If you're not familiar with what that is, this is a program that is for someone that wants to have an online business, how to set it up, how to get going. And that relates to so many people that listen to this podcast. If you want to have a business develop out of your podcast, B School is a great program for you. Our Digital Course Academy, this is another program that I know a lot of you are like, I think I could create a digital course, or I think that I could use the content from my podcast that I'm already talking about to my audience and go deeper on the subject. So creating a digital course may be something up your alley. And I know it's not going to be for everyone, but at the end of the day, I look at my audience and I see who they are, right? I know so much about you because you engage with me on social media. You reply back to the emails that I send every single Friday. And I know that these types of programs are a good fit for the Profit Podcast audience. Y'all, I'm not trying to sell you a mattress. The reason why I bring up mattresses is because I always hear mattress ads on branded podcasts that are really, really big. And I think, why I don't need a mattress. Why are they're still trying to sell me a mattress? I've listened to this podcast for a year and a half. I still don't need a mattress. So it's not something that's necessarily aligned with what my audience wants. Does that make sense? I hope you're nodding along. Yes, I get it. We're on the same page here. But let's go back to systems real fast. So systems simply means, and where it's going to kind of segue into the third thing that we need to talk about, but systems at the end of the day means being organized. If you're not organized with your podcast right now, you're not going to be any better once you start monetizing and adding more things to your plate. So start creating systems for your content calendar, for the guests that you're going to have on your show. What does that look like? Just start writing things down. And something that I learned in my entrepreneur journey is I need those standard operating procedures. I know they sound super boring. They sound like something that's like, wait, what? No, I'm not at that level. No, it's my podcast isn't a hobby, but it's a business, but I just, no, that's not me. I don't want to be that organized. I don't want to be that rigid. But at the end of the day, if I find a company I love, a company I really, really want to work with, a company that I know can really, really help you, and I want to start promoting it on the podcast, or I want to talk about it on social media, or I want to have a great campaign that promotes something like Kajabi. Kajabi is another promotion that we have going on in July 2021, where they have a fantastic deal going on. And I know that it could work for someone in this community. And at the end of the day, if I don't know how to talk about it, if I haven't planned it out, if I haven't created a standard operating procedure for how my affiliate campaigns work, it's going to be a lot harder. And I'll just be really honest, this is going to be clunky. It's not going to be a great process whenever you first get started because you don't have a process. Most of you tell me, like, you come to me and you're like, I just kind of do my thing, record my podcast, and I put it up. I don't have a lot of systems for how I market my show to my audience. I thought you just had to put it out there. I thought publishing the episode in my podcast host was like, that was it, right? Like that's where you stop. No, it's not. If you want to treat your podcast like a business, you have to commit to going beyond just publishing an episode. You've got to figure out how to market your show. You got to figure out how to get it in front of the right audience. And these are things that we talk about in Profit Podcasting. This is my digital course. We talk about ways to monetize. We talk about how to find the right audience. And if you are just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Crystal, like when it comes to understanding who your audience is, finding like, go to crystalprofit.com/course, and you're going to find more information about Profit Podcasting. This is where I teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. But at the end of the day, systems will save you. Systems will be something that is the foundation of the business of your podcast, right? Because you probably committed in the first question, is it a hobby or is it a business? If it's a business, you need to have systems in place. Systems to monetize, systems to make money, systems to keep having more different affiliate campaigns, or maybe it's your own programs. Maybe it's something I don't even know. It's a way to monetize I'd never even thought of, but you need to start having systems in place. That's how you know you're ready to monetize. Okay, and then the last thing I want to talk about is the aspect of treating your business like a business. Now, I am not a legal person, right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm also not a financial person, right? I'm not going to give you legal advice or financial advice. I'm really saying this to cover my butt because I don't want you to go off and say, oh, Crystal told me to do this. No. I'm telling you, these are the questions you need to ask yourself. If you're treating your podcast like a business, then you need to set it up properly on the back end so you don't have a financial mess or maybe even a legal mess in the future. And I can just tell you how I've done this for myself. So to properly, this is number 3, right? We're talking about the behind the scenes of setting up the business of your podcast properly. What I did is I did set up an LLC for my business, which is Profit Media. If you've heard me talk about Profit Media, that is the umbrella of Profit Podcasting, all my digital courses, like all the things that I do, that is under the umbrella of Profit Media. And there's a few reasons why I did this. One, I wanted to have the business separate from what my husband and I do. And I wanted to have a bank account that was specifically for the business because I didn't want to be like, oh, hey, babe, by the way, I got a bunch of PayPal transactions in our personal account, but that doesn't really go towards our regular budget of groceries and buying gas and like all those things. Like we need to keep that separate. No, I can tell you right now, I grew up with a dad my dad had his own plumbing business for a long time, and he did everything in one account. And I can tell you right now, it is stressful, it's a mess, and it's not something I ever want to deal with, having your personal assets and your business assets commingled that way. So I recommend, and this is again, it's not financial advice, it's not legal advice, but this is what I did, is having your business and your personal stuff separate. And so in order to have the LLC, in order to have the bank account separate and have it say, like my business card says, Profit Media, the way I had to do that was setting up my own LLC. Like I have an EIN number, like a tax ID, like all those things. It's set up through Profit Media because I wanted it to be separate. And maybe you're like, I don't have the money to do that, or maybe it's really expensive in your state. Well, these are the things you need to think about when you're saying, am I ready to monetize? Because if you don't have a separate bank account, if you don't have your LLC, maybe that's something you want to wait to monetize, or, wait. Maybe you're not ready until you have those things. And maybe you need to save up a little money and invest in your business to make that happen. But at the end of the day, if all of a sudden you are making, like, let's just say, for example, right? Let's say you did monetize and one of your affiliate campaigns took off. Maybe you made a ton of money. You got a windfall, like you got really lucky with one program and you were like, oh my gosh, like I just made $20,000 overnight, and it all goes into your personal account. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I started making money through being a StreamYard affiliate. And then I started making money as a Buzzsprout affiliate. And then I started making money here. And then now I can't keep separate my expenses and my income because I'm not sure exactly how much business money I have in my account. I want you to avoid all of that. So if you're going to treat your podcast like a business, if you're going to monetize, I recommend laying the foundation from the get-go. It will make things so much easier. So much easier. So let's do a quick recap. So the first thing that we talked about is your mindset. Is your podcast a hobby or is it a business? I want you to think about it. If you got to think about it and you're not sure, maybe it's just a hobby for now, and that's okay. That's totally fine. But if you're like, I'm ready to make my podcast part of my business, I'm ready to create a business using my podcast, then you got to think more seriously and commit to some of these other systems, which is the second thing, is setting up systems, having processes and procedures in place so that you can monetize. And then the third thing is we kind of talked about the formalities behind the scenes of having an LLC or setting up a business bank account. It really makes things so much easier. So if you've been podcasting for a while and you're like, you know what, I think that I'm serious about this, I want this to be a business, then consider looking into it, right? Like, what is it going to hurt if you start looking into what is the process in my state or where I live to set up an entity outside of my personal affairs, like my personal whatever, that is going to cover me, right? It's going to cover my butt at the end of the day. Like, that's what my husband and we talked about. We're like, you know what? We need a little protection. What if something goes wrong with the business? What if I, get sued by somebody and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, like our house is at risk, or, our kids' college fund, like they're going to take that, like anything like that scares the crap out of me. I'm a very risk averse person. So I set up an LLC and now everything is just run through the business. It doesn't go to my personal account for my payments, like any money that I make. It goes through the business because I committed a long time ago that my podcast was going to be a business and not a hobby. Okay, I feel like we could keep talking about making money and all the things, but I'm going to save that for another day. But if you are curious about other ways to make money with a podcast, it's something we talk about in Profit Podcasting. So like I said, you can go to the show notes. You can, if it's something that you're like, I really want to get serious about monetizing, about running my podcast in a way that I show up differently. I'm more serious about what I'm doing. I encourage you to go learn more and see if profit podcasting is right for you. But that's all I have for you today. Go check out the show notes, crystalprofit.com/episode 269. And I want to know what you learned today. Like, did you learn anything? Did you learn that your podcast is a hobby right now, but you want it to be a business? Like, take a screenshot wherever you're listening, tag me on social media, let me know what your number one takeaway was, because I would love to hear from you. And that's all I have for you today. So as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, "Send Crystal a text message." And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, "Send Crystal a text message." And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.